Hey Sierras, what's happening? Last night I presented at the Melbourne Dynamics CRM user group. I had a bit of issues in the beginning, so I couldn't get my laptop connecting to the projector. Anyways, all that aside, finally got it connected, so had a really good time last night and everyone learnt something from me. So again, I'm just sharing my knowledge with you all. So I'm going to be showing you an opportunity process with our code. So earlier this year, I did already vlog about this. However, this time round, I've improved it because I'm actually now utilizing this in a project. So there's a lot of things that have, well, actually not a lot. There's a few things that would have changed from what you saw in my original vlog post. So the client requirement is that we're wanting to prevent the salesperson in progressing to the next sales stage. So if it hasn't been approved when the salesperson is in a particular sales stage, stop the person from moving forward. So the scenario is you've got a salesperson and you have a sales manager. The sales manager is the only one who has ability to approve the quote when the opportunity is in the quote sales stage. And if it hasn't been approved, then the salesperson should move on to the next sales stage. And we worked out that there are 3 approval statuses. So the first one is awaiting approval, and then we have not approved and approved. Okay, so I'm going to take you through this now. Before I show you what customizations I've done, I'm just going to briefly explain the business process flow, just in case you haven't used it just yet or you haven't seen CM 2013 before. In the opportunity record in CM 2013, there's this little area just below the record heading, and it is a business process flow. And within a business process flow, there is a stage. So in each stage of business process flow, there's going to be steps. So what I mean by stage is qualify, develop, quote, and close. These are the stages in the business process flow. And when I mentioned the steps, I was referring to these. So customer need, propose solution, identify stakeholders, identify competitors. These steps are represented by fields. So these are the fields that exist in your opportunity entity. In terms of the customization of the business process flow, you have the ability to change the labeling. So the customer need is just a label. You can change that, and you can also make this required or not required, as well as you have the ability to change the business process flow stage names. So how you do that is you go into your solution or in the default customization, and you go into processes, and then what you want to do is you want to find the business process flow. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this up. And within here is where you can do those customizations that I spoke of. So you can change the name, you can add the steps, which are essentially your fields. So you have to select the field, and here is where you can change that label, and then you can tick or untick this to make this required. Now, this little flag indicates where you are in the business process flow. So the whole point of a business process flow is guiding you as the end user in completing or progressing forward with this particular record. You'll notice that there is a tick beside this stage name, and that means it's been completed. So when you hover your mouse cursor over it, it's going to show as completed. Whereas now if I hover over this one, it's going to show as active. If I hover over quote or close, it's not going to show anything because I haven't done any engagement within this stage of the business process flow. Okay, so now that I've explained that, this will give you an idea of how I came up with the business process flow in the first place. And because you can add fields into the business process flow, that's when I realized that you can use this to your advantage when coming up with an approval process. So basically what you want to do is you want to create custom fields that will be your enablers into that approval process. So one of the enablers is this approval status field. This approval status field has 3 values. So that was what I showed you earlier in the slideshow. For those of you who saw my original blog post, this used to be a 2 option set. So it was just a simple yes, no. This time around, I'm using an option set with 3 values, and I'll show you why I've done that. I also had to enable field security for this field. So the only person that can update this field is the salesperson. And then what I did was I also created an approved by field to indicate who updated the approval status field, as well as a request approval field. So this is, again, one of the enablers in the approval process where the salesperson has to request approval. Now, remember how I spoke about the approval status field, how I enabled field security? When you enable field security, you need to create the required field security profile. So the first one here is for the sales manager. So the sales manager is Jane Doe, and only Jane can update this approval status field. Whereas anyone else, so who is not a sales manager and is a salesperson, all they have the ability to do is read that field, so view the field, but they can't actually update it. So after creating the fields in the field security profile, I then added it to the form as well as the business process flow. I'm just going to go ahead and open up this business process flow, and when I scroll down, here are the custom fields that I created, and I made them required. And there's a reason I made them required, which you'll see soon. So after I did that, the next step that I had to do was I had to create the workflows. So the first workflow that I created was notifying the salesperson, the sales manager when a salesperson has requested approval. So I created 2 conditions. The first one is in the context of when the salesperson is requesting approval for the first time. So this is when the approval status is null, when it's empty, when it's neither awaiting approval, approved, or not approved. The second condition is when the opportunity has not been approved and the salesperson has to resubmit their approval request. So when the sales manager declines it, the approval status will still be not approved, and then they have to request for approval again. This probably doesn't make sense right now, but I promise you it will when I do the walkthrough. So I'm just going to go ahead and activate this. Oh, before I move on, I'll just show you the criteria. So what I'm doing here is I'm ensuring that the salesperson has requested for approval, so it has to be yes, they have requested for approval, and that the stage category of the business process flow is quote, and that the approval status is null. So I'm going to go ahead and activate this. While that's being activated, again, I just remembered I forgot to highlight something in here. After the salesperson has requested for approval, what I'm doing is I'm setting the approval status to awaiting approval. So we actually want to update that status as well. So this workflow, this workflow is going to be triggered when the request approval field is updated, and this is a real-time workflow, so it's not an asynchronous workflow. This is going to be triggered immediately when the person requests for that approval. Okay, so that was workflow 1. The second workflow that I created was notifying the salesperson when the sales opportunity has been approved or not approved. So in this workflow, the salesperson receives an email, and the approved by field is then updated with the sales manager who approved the opportunity or has not approved the opportunity. So again, this is a real-time workflow, and the trigger this time is the approval status. I'm going to show you the criteria. So in here, all I'm saying is that if the approval status equals approved and the stage category is quote and that request approval equals yes, then send a nice email to the salesperson. Otherwise, if it hasn't been approved, then the salesperson is notified and they have to schedule a meeting with the sales manager, Jane, to understand why it wasn't approved. So I'm going to go ahead and activate this, and now I'm going to show you what this looks like in the CRM opportunity record. Okay, so I'm logged in as John Smith. Currently, I am in the develop stage of the business process flow. When I click next stage, it's going to move me on to the quote stage. So remember earlier how I made these fields required, and if I have not made them required, then I'll be able to move on. But because I have made them required, I can't move on to the next stage because this message appears because it's saying that you have to complete the required steps before you can advance. So that's one of the advantages in making the step in the business process flow required. So you're preventing the user from moving on if they haven't updated it. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes. So I've generated my quote, I've associated it to the opportunity, and now I'm ready to request approval from Jane, my sales manager. So what's going to happen here is when I update this to yes, my real-time workflow is going to be executed. So when I hit save, this is going to update to awaiting approval. So here it is here. So just to show you which workflow this is related to, it's related to notifying the sales manager, and it is this condition up here. So this is when I'm requesting approval for the first time. So as we wait for the email to come through, there is another thing I need to show you that is quite important here. Okay, you see how approval status is awaiting approval? I'm logged in as John, and because we enabled this to be a field security field, I can't update this myself. But if I click next stage, what do you think is going to happen? Am I going to be able to move on, or am I going to be prevented from moving on? Well, let's find out. So I'm going to click next stage, and I was able to move on. Why do you think that is? Well, if we go back, this time round, because this has been populated and it's not null, the business process flow is allowing me to move on. And from what I showed you earlier, there's only so much you can customize in the business process flow. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this up now. I can only change the stage name, the stage category, the steps, the step label, the field, and required, but I don't really have control in the this next stage button. But if you think about it, there is actually a way around this. So if I show you the criteria again, you don't want to allow the salesperson to move from the quote sales stage until it's been approved. So your first criteria is right there in front of you. So if approval status does not equal approved, then the salesperson shouldn't be able to move on. But that doesn't really help me because I still can't customize this. And that's when I did through some investigation into this, where I thought, okay, what if I use a field that will capture the sales stage name of the business process flow, and I could use this in my workflow. It turns out that in CM 2013, there's a field called pipeline phase, and I did blog about this in my previous post, so go ahead and take a look at that. But in summary, this field, pipeline phase, it is being updated whenever the salesperson moves to and from stages in the business process flow. So if I click back, it's now updated to develop. If I click back again, it's going to update to qualify. So this is actually new functionality in CRM 2013, which I discovered recently as a result of this. So in light of this recent discovery, this is what I then use to help prevent the salesperson from moving on to the next stage. So I had to create a third real-time workflow. So again, this is going to be executed immediately. So as soon as someone tries to click on next stage and it hasn't been approved, they're going to get stopped. So in here, what I did was, again, I've created two conditions. So the first condition is if it does not equal approved and the stage category equals close, then we want to cancel the workflow and throw an error message. So here's where I typed in my error message. And then with the second one, if for whatever reason, so let me just go back to the opportunity record, the salesperson has requested approval, but they need to move back to develop to, I don't know, let's say update one of these steps. The person should still be allowed to move backwards. It's only moving forwards where they shouldn't really move forward until it has been approved. So that's the second condition in this workflow. So this time around I'm saying approval status does not equal approved and that the process stage category does not equal close. So if it's in qualify, develop, or quote, then the salesperson can move backwards. So I'm going to go ahead and activate this third workflow, and I'm going to show you how it now works. Okay, so now that the workflow is activated, now when I click on next stage, I should get that error message appearing. Cool, so here it is. So this is the third real-time workflow that I just showed you. And here's my error message that I entered. If I move backwards, I'm not going to get an error message. Oops, what just happened there? Okay. So now that I've shown you that, let's go back to where we were in the beginning. So Jane should now receive an email. So John had requested for approval. The status is updated to awaiting approval. Jane gets the email and she sees a few details about the opportunity. She then just clicks on the URL that will directly take her to the opportunity record, and let's say she reviews the quote. She's not okay with the quote, so then she updates this to not approved. So notice how that padlock symbol isn't showing anymore compared to John Smith, and that's because of that field security profile that I created earlier, where Jane has ability to update this field. So let's say she doesn't like the quote and she updates it to not approved. That's saved. Now you would have quickly seen that this is set back to null because it hasn't been approved, and the reason why I've done that is so that when the salesperson goes back to the record, they do see that it hasn't been approved. So that workflow is my second workflow. Let me just pull it up. And it's the second condition in that workflow where it hasn't been approved, and we're also updating the approval status, the request approval back to no. So then John gets an email and he goes, oh no, okay, my quote hasn't been approved. All right, so I need to schedule a meeting with Jane. So after John and Jane have discussed it and Jane gives him the suggestions and he updates the quote, he has to then resubmit it for approval. So again, he comes back in the opportunity record, he can see that it hasn't been approved, so then he sets it to yes. As soon as he sets it to yes, it will then update the status to awaiting approval. So there it is there, and that is a result of my first workflow. So it's this second condition in here. So when it's not approved, we want to set it back to awaiting approval, and we want Jane to get another email. So here is that email that Jane received. So again, she has to go in here and she has to approve it. And once she approves it, my second real-time workflow will get triggered and John will receive an email. So that workflow is this one. So when it equals approved, an email again is sent to John. So let's wait for that email to come through. Cool. So now he's received the email saying that it has been approved and that he can progress to the next stage. So let's go ahead and test it out. So now when John goes back to the opportunity record, the approval status is approved. Again, he can't update it, and this time he can move to the next stage. And there you go. So that is an approval process in the opportunity record. In my original vlog post, I didn't create the third real-time workflow because back then my approval status field, it was just a 2-option set, yes, no. Whereas this time around, I'm actually using status values of awaiting approval, approved, not approved. Depending on the approval status value, the salesperson can't move forward until it has been approved. If it hasn't been approved, it goes back into that cycle again where the salesperson has to resubmit their approval request. So just to recap, you can use custom fields, you can use field security, and then you have to create the field security profiles, and then you have to create your workflows. So the first workflow is notifying the salesperson, and you have to create 2 conditions where the first condition is when the salesperson resubmits the request for the first time, and then the second one is when they have to submit the request after it hasn't been approved. Then you've got your second real-time workflow where it notifies the salesperson that it has been approved or not approved. And then the final workflow is the one that prevents the person from moving forward if that approval status is not approved. So that's when you have to cancel the workflow and present that error message. And yeah, that's it. That's how you achieve an approval process and the opportunity record. And judging from the feedback last night, a lot of people were happy that you can achieve an approval process with just customization. So if you do like this, then please by all means share it with everyone else or anyone that you know that is a CRM professional and doesn't know any code. Like me, I don't know any code. So I'm all about helping others in CRM. Okay, well, I'll see you next time. Bye.